Welcome to the Debka File, a weekly roundup of exclusive news, insight, and analysis from the Middle East, broadcast to you live from the heart of the region. Coming up on the program today, Iran's attack on Saudi Arabian tankers boosts oil prices. Attacks on Israel's northern and southern borders. Assad connives in an ISIS massacre of Syrian Druzes. Putin moves away from U.S. and Israel and woos France and Germany. Iran chooses Iraq to help fight U.S. sanctions. And now to our top headlines. Debka File intelligence sources report that last Wednesday, an Iranian weapons-holding spy ship called Saviz launched an attack against two Saudi Arabian supertankers on the Red Sea. The ship was disguised as an Iranian cargo vessel and carried containers filled with surveillance gear for tracking military and commercial shipments on the Red Sea. Western and Middle East naval sources have been watching the spy ship as it moved between the Eritrean archipelago and the Bab al-Mandeb Straits in the Red Sea. Saudi and UAE intelligence reported signals from Saviz prior to the first Saudi supertanker being attacked from the Houthi coastal bases opposite Yemen's Red Sea coast. Debka military sources report that the Houthis fired Iranian missiles at the Saudi tankers, one of them reaching the tanker and putting a hole in it. Experts claim that if it had gone deeper inside the ship, it would have caused an environmental disaster. The Saudis did not want to risk taking chances with the harmed vessel and announced the suspension of oil shipments through the Red Sea until all shipments were secure. At that point, oil prices rose 1% in the world markets. Since almost 5 million barrels of oil are shipped through the Straits of Bab al-Mandeb, blocking the Red Sea Strait would prevent oil shipments from reaching Europe and the Far East. After the attacks, Qasem Soleimani, Iran's Al-Quds force chief, claimed that the Red Sea is not secure with American troops in it. Over the past 2 years, the Iranian and Hezbollah-trained Houthis have launched 8 attacks against U.S., Saudi, and UAE warships in the Red Sea. On Friday, Washington officials reported that the Trump administration was considering military action, which could involve greater intervention in the Yemen war, to maintain an open channel despite Iranian threats. Other insiders state that any military action would be taken by U.S. allies, including Saudi Arabia, rather than American troops. The Iranians have successfully threatened a primary oil pathway, which would cause major repercussions in the near future. Debka Weekly sources predict that if Iran decides to cut off Gulf oil exports, it will not do so by blocking Hormuz, but rather by sending its proxies, such as the Houthis, into violent action in other parts of the Gulf and the Red Sea region. According to energy market experts, this violence could raise oil prices in the coming months. With us in the studio to discuss this is Dr. Mordechai Kedar, a lecturer at Bar-Ilan University and an expert on the Arab-Israeli conflict. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
So how do you think Israel and the U.S. will respond to Iran's blocking pathways in the Red Sea Straits to prevent the transport of oil?
Well, first of all, we have to realize that when you don't take care of a problem when it is small, you have to take care of the same problem when it is big. And by attacking the world shipments of oil, this becomes a big problem. Because whenever there is an attack on an oil tanker in the Red Sea, prices of oil are raising up everywhere in the world. So this is the problem. And I think now Trump, as a man who knows something about business and prices, I more than believe that he will get to action in this case, because there is no way to leave the world to the mercy of the mullahs in Iran to do whatever they like, wherever they like, especially in international straits, where international traffic of ships should be totally free.
Do you think Trump will reconsider putting sanctions on Iran with the given circumstances that could impact the U.S. directly?
Well, if I try to read what happens in Washington these days, I think that people already have started to think beyond sanctions, means really actions against Iran, maybe not on the Iranian soil, but definitely against Iranian proxies, just like the Houthis in Iraq, and there are many more.
How do you think rising oil prices will affect Europe, especially during the winter?
Well, don't forget that Europe has another supply of heating material from Russia, the gas which goes through the Ukraine. So unlike what happens in the 70s and the 80s, today Europe has an alternative. I'm not sure that this alternative will fully cover the Middle Eastern oil if this oil stops to come to Europe, yet Europe has some kind of substitute which could, let's say, make the ramifications more moderate than what we think.
Will Russia and Iran profit as oil producers?
Definitely, because look, don't forget that they are also two of the three main producers of gas, which Qatar is the third. Whenever oil prices go up, people start to resort to gas, to natural gas. And here is where Russia and Iran can benefit, because they are the two of the three main exporters of natural gas.
How do you think China, as the world's biggest oil consumer, will react?
Well, China, I think, will have to come one day to a junction. Where does it go? Because you cannot be in bed with the Iranians, with the investments and the oil and everything, and the other side to start to be nice or to act in the international arena as if they are not in bed with the Iranians. The Americans one day will tell them, hey guys, you have to decide. Either you are with them or you are with us. And when this comes, they might choose the right side, means to be against the Iranians and with the Americans.
And what do you think could happen at that point?
Well, this definitely will bring Iran to its end, because Iran today relies on the support which it gets from Russia on one side, but mainly from China. Maybe India also buys, also they do buy oil products from Iran. But if all these countries will have the choice, either with Iran or you are with us, and they will choose the American side, then Iran definitely will come to very, very terrible problem from the economic point of view. And don't forget that already yesterday, the currency of Iran today, $1 is more than 100,000. I mean, $1 is more than 100,000 riyal. It means the deterioration of the money. People lost their faith in the local economy, maybe in the local regime as well, as part of the economy. And in my view, Iran is actually sliding into the end of the days of the mullahs.
And what happens if China does not side with the U.S.?
Well, China is a big enough country, and its economy is big enough, and they do have the coal which they can rely on. They do have large margin of play between the United States and Iran. So definitely they have long breath when it's come to economy. But other countries like the Europeans, I think that the Europeans definitely will succumb to the American demand, because at the end of the day, the one who makes the decisions about economic issues is not the government in Europe. It's the companies which will have to choose between working with Iran or working with America.
That's Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Thank you very much for your insight today.
My pleasure and my honor.
There are currently at least 20 fires per day blazing in southern Israel, caused by Palestinian flammable balloons sent over the border from Gaza. On Friday, an Israeli drone targeted a Palestinian balloon squad in Gaza. There were no injuries reported. The recent death of IDF Sergeant Aviv Levy by a sniper on Friday and the injury of a field commander last Wednesday highlights how inadequate the IDF's response has been to deal with the escalating tensions on the Gaza border. The IDF launched a series of jets, drones, and tanks against 7 Hamas bases, and Hamas launched 9 rockets towards Israel. One of the rockets was intercepted by the Iron Dome. Israel again leaves Hamas with the initiative for the next round, but with no cure in sight. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke to a new intake of Israeli Army and Border Police recruits on July 26th.
אנחנו במערכה. זה כרוך בחילופי מהלומות, אבל בסופו של דבר, זה מבחן של כוח רצון. אנחנו ממצים את כל האפשרויות, כדי להשיג את המטרה. אנחנו נשמור על ביטחון ישראל, על ביטחון אזרחי ישראל, על ביטחון מדינת ישראל. אבל אנחנו מאוד מאוד נחושים להגן על גבולותינו. ואנחנו נעשה מה שצריך כדי לשמור על הביטחון לא רק של יישובי עוטף עזה, אלא של מדינת ישראל.
Meanwhile, on the northern border, 2 rockets were fired from the Syrian-Israeli-Jordanian border last Wednesday by ISIS, which was under heavy assault by Syrian and pro-Iranian allied forces after maintaining a stronghold in the Yarmouk enclave near Israel for years. The IDF's defense missile systems failed to intercept them before they dropped into the Sea of Galilee, the day after the Israeli patriots downed a Syrian drone. The ISIS rocket fire was meant to manipulate the IDF into attacking the Syrian army and relieve the pressure on its stronghold. That strategy, however, did not work. The IDF correctly identified the source of the 2 rockets and struck back, destroying the rocket launcher. The Russian complimented Israel on a successful counterterrorism operation. However, the results of this round was negative for Israel. Syrian and allied forces were able to capture the ISIS enclave and get closer to Israel's Sea of Galilee. Prime Minister Netanyahu says the downed Syrian jet violated the 1975 Golan Demilitarization Agreement.
מערכות ההגנה האווירית שלנו זיהו מטוס של חיל האוויר הסורי, ממריא מבסיס חיל האוויר הסורי T4 וחודר לשטח ישראל. זו הפרה בוטה של הסכמי ההפרדה בינינו ובין סוריה מ-1974. ואני חזרתי והבהרתי שלא נקבל שום הפרה כזאת. לא נקבל שום חדירה ושום זליגה לשטחנו, לא מהקרקע ולא מהאוויר. וכוחותינו פעלו בהתאם. אנחנו עומדים על כך שסוריה תכבד בקפדנות את הסכמי ההפרדה בינינו לבינה.
Syrian forces withdrew from the Diyatha base, where they monitored ISIS activity before moving west. Syrian Druze authorities rejected an offer by the Syrian government to protect them against the Islamists and said they could manage alone. To teach the Druze residents a lesson for their independent spirit and pride, the Russians and Syrians pushed out the residents of Diyatha, allowing ISIS terrorists to invade the surrounding towns. When Druze fighters tried to save their communities, it was too late. ISIS slaughtered 256 people and injured almost 400 others. Many Druze Arabs showed up for the rally in the Golan Heights, in which they protested killings in Syria.
هذا العمل الإجرامي يتضامن معه أبناء الجولان لأنهم كتلة واحدة من الشعب السوري وأخوة ويقفون مع أهلهم في القطر سوريا.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has moved away from the understandings with the U.S. and Israel on Syria, which were sealed at his Helsinki summit with President Donald Trump. This policy reversal came after Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Chief of Staff General Valery Gerasimov could not accomplish their goal of convincing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to accept a Russian compromise to move Iran 100 kilometers from the Israeli border. A Russian deal with Netanyahu was one of Trump's conditions for collaborating with Moscow to resolve the crisis in Syria. When Netanyahu dug in on the Iranian issue, Putin put Helsinki behind him and ordered Lavrov and Gerasimov to go to Paris and Berlin with several objectives. First, they would attempt to persuade France and Germany to drop out of the U.S.-led Geneva Conference on Syria and join the Russian Astana peace process at its next session in Sochi on July 30th and 31st. This would also open the door to their understandings with Iran and Turkey on other key issues in addition to Syria. Russian President Putin and Turkish President Erdogan spoke at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Наши отношения двусторонние находятся на подъеме, совершенно очевидно. И в области преодоления кризисов, прежде всего, конечно, я имею в виду сирийский кризис.
Öyle zannediyorum ki bu yıl hakikaten bir 6 milyon gibi bir turist noktasında Türkiye'yi ziyaret edecek. Tüm bunlarla beraber aramızdaki her türlü dayanışma birilerini de gerçekten kıskandırıyor.
President Putin also says he wants France and Germany to withdraw their forces from the U.S.-led coalition in Syria. In a direct anti-Israel turnaround, Putin sees Russia, France, and Germany teaming up to demand Israel's adherence to UN Security Council Resolution 232 to withdraw from territory captured in 1967, according to the pro-Palestinian interpretation that was based on a resolution made in 1973 for a ceasefire. Putin is awaiting a response from German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron. Meanwhile, Moscow has rejected all of Netanyahu's proposals to remove Iran and Hezbollah from Syria. After Iranian President Hassan Rouhani threatened the U.S. with war, President Trump responded with the following tweet. Quote, "Never ever threaten the United States or you will suffer consequences, the likes of which few have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious." Although the White House Security Council and State Department believe that the Iranian government will collapse under a sinking economy and domestic unrest, Debka analysts see Iran hitting back at Washington in Iraq. The unrest Tehran incited last week in Shiite-dominated southern Iraq thwarted U.S. efforts to help a government coalition without Iranian influence rising in Iraq, 3 months after the general elections. The U.S. plan to send armed Kurdish forces into Iran backfired as Iran and Turkey formed a joint command center to launch attacks on Kurdish targets in Iraq. For every new sanction that the U.S. puts on Iran, Tehran plans to subvert U.S. interests in other parts of the Middle East. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced that U.S. broadcasting in Farsi would be increased, which would offer a way to urge the Iranian people to rise up against the tyranny in Tehran. And now for a roundup of this week's stories you may have missed, the news in brief. The nation's state law was passed by the Knesset last week, and one of the supporters of the bill was Shadi Khalul, the head of the Christian Maronite community in Israel. He said that a Jewish majority would guarantee a democratic Israel and would protect minorities and their rights. The equality for all citizens is already enshrined in 2 older Israeli basic laws. Khalul believes that this law will prevent what happened in Lebanon, in which Christians were once the majority population of Lebanon until they were pushed back by the Muslims.
מדינת ישראל היא מדינת הלאום של העם היהודי, עם שוויון זכויות מלא לכל אזרחיה. זוהי המשמעות של המילים מדינה יהודית ודמוקרטית. את שוויון הזכויות האישי של אזרחי ישראל קבענו בשורה של חוקים, לרבות חוק יסוד כבוד האדם וחירותו, חוקים שמבטיחים שוויון מלא בפני החוק, החל בזכות לבחור ולהיבחר לכנסת, וכלה בכל זכות אישית אחרת במדינת ישראל. לעומת זה, את זכויות הלאום של העם היהודי בארצו, מעולם לא קבענו בחוק יסוד, עד עתה, כשהעברנו את חוק הלאום. מה המשמעות של זכויות לאום? הן מגדירות את הדגל, את ההמנון, את השפה, וכמובן את העובדה שאחד מיעדיה היסודיים של המדינה הוא קיבוץ גלויות עמנו וקליטתם פה בארץ ישראל.
Scientists at the Weizmann Institute in Israel have discovered a new combination of drugs to cure drug-resistant lung cancer. The study focused on the type of lung cancer caused by a gene mutation, which affects 12% of lung cancer patients. The scientists used a drug to block the mutation in combination with a drug that blocks the EGFR gene, along with a third drug that blocks the HER2 receptor. This combination caused the tumors to decrease in size and not grow back so long as the treatment continued. This discovery could extend the lives of thousands of lung cancer patients. Scientists from Tel Aviv University have discovered an enzyme that can be used to prevent inflammation and scarring after spinal cord injury. Dr. Yona Goldschmidt and Dr. Angela Rubin studied the neuroprotective effects of this enzyme on rodents with spinal cord injuries and discovered that the treatment increased the survival rate of neurons and allowed for the regeneration at the location of the injury. The key is to treat the patient immediately after an injury without waiting for a diagnosis. Waiting too long could offset the benefits. The Israeli startup Redkicks was just acquired by Facebook for $100 million. The system combines email, SMS, and a calendar in a collaborative platform. Founded in 2014 by brothers Udi and Roy Ontebi, the goal was to allow people to organize their incoming messages more efficiently. Redkicks is Facebook's 5th acquisition in Israel. That's all for this week's edition of the Debka File. We'll be back with you next week for more exclusive news, insight, and analysis from the Middle East. Be sure to check out our website at iltv.tv and our Facebook page. I'm Yael Shir. Thanks for watching.